As part of the same executive order that granted hospitals near-blanket immunity from malpractice litigation during the epidemic, Governor Cuomo singled out hydroxychloroquine as the one drug that could not be used as an off-label therapy for COVID-19, except as a part of approved studies. The order was issued ostensibly to prevent hoarding, so that those who take this decades-old, inexpensive treatment with a long safety record for approved conditions like lupus would have access to it. He later amended the order to allow hydroxychloroquine's use in later-stage patients in hospitals, but not in early outpatient treatment. Both hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine had shown efficacy in the prior SARS coronavirus epidemic, and studies in France and other countries had already shown its effectiveness for COVID-19. But instead of making research and production of a promising therapy a priority so that there wouldn't be shortages, vents became the near-exclusive focus, along with the search for a vaccine. This has been true even of President Trump, who, despite his public cheering for hydroxychloroquine, has not made it the focus of warp speed funding and testing. A number of U.S. studies have shown the promise of hydroxychloroquine-based therapies, most recently a Yale University study focused on early treatment. And in what may be the most scandalous retraction in recent memory, a Lancet paper that purported to show hydroxychloroquine alone or with other therapies was in fact dangerous has been shown to be based on fraudulent data. Aaron's home hospital system confirmed in a phone conversation with Perspectives on the Pandemic that they have used a protocol involving hydroxychloroquine and zinc to great effect.
Because in your view, this should be an individually decided doctor-patient choice.
Everything should be that. I mean, there is no reason that any government should get in between a doctor-patient relationship. That's none of their business. You know, if anything is HIPAA protected, it should be that. I mean, when you think about it, it's sickening. It's the same reason they won't use like other treatments that are successful around the world. And I had a conversation with a doctor about this.
Are you guys doing like different sorts of like treatments? Because I know like
nothing works.
They have. Yeah, but I mean, they're coming out with different things that are in the testing phase.
It's the same thing. They come with a flaponil that kill more people than actually save. So that's one.
And he said that they don't work anyway. And I told him, well, obviously, what you guys have going on here isn't working. So what's the harm in trying?
I don't expect any of these people to survive. 90% of them would die.
I mean, it's just maintaining. So I figured if it's assumed they're gonna die anyway,
just try.
Why not throw a few?
Well, it's I don't know. That's always an issue in medicine whether you should just throw things whether they're dying anyway or not.
But if you could find a cure.
Well, there's no cure, so there's no antiviral therapy. The only way to do it is cure, but there's no
treatment. I should say rephrase treatment.
You could treat it, but you have to have some scientific basis for whether these things are working or not, and just throwing everything at them. You could make them worse. So
worse than death. Worse than death.
Well, we said 90%, maybe that 10%, maybe they're true. I don't know. So, but I mean, if there's no basis for it working, I mean, you wouldn't just try things just because. I mean,
I would.
I might,
if it could save my life. Yeah, hell yeah.
So, with these actual COVID patients, they present by not really being able to breathe. Maybe they've, as you say, they've probably waited too long. They're not able to breathe, and some of that's anxiety. And what else? So what else do they? How else do they present?
So their lungs. If you look at their X-rays, you can immediately see that these patients are affected by COVID because they're white. Their lungs are white, and the secretions are really, really thick, mucousy, and white. And that's what the photo or the X-ray of these lungs look like.
And so what does a white lung look mean? What is that? Is that mucus?
Yeah,
in the lung?
it's coated. It's almost like their lungs are coated.
So that makes it hard to obviously transfer oxygen into the bloodstream. And so they've got very mucousy lungs. And how do you deal with that? Is that what hydroxychloroquine and zinc do? Or?
I mean, those treatments are for beginning stages. Like once you get to the stage where your lungs are looking like that and you're having a lot of trouble breathing, there are proven treatments that have passed 3 trials in Asia through Dr. Chang. He's a U.S. board certified physician. Is this like extremely high dose IV vitamin C? He's successfully treating people with that, and what that's doing is it's giving your body, essentially your lungs, like the power, the antioxidant power to kick it out, while you can be getting IV antibiotics to be treating this and getting rid of it. But they don't want to have anything to do with it here. What they want to do is just throw them on a vent and sedate them.
Yeah.
Have you done the high dose IV vitamin C that's successful in Asia?
That doesn't work. Really, the other stuff doesn't. People are trying all kinds of silly stuff. There's no scientific basis for vitamin C to be working here.
Well, the Dr. Chang, he was the one that it went through that high dose. I'm talking super high dose IV vitamin C. That's super antioxidants. Helps your body fight that.
Yeah.
It passed three trials. And it's being effective. It's just weird how like everybody just like shuts it down immediately.
Because it's the vitamin C story has been around for a very long time.
Oh, that's weird because I take it daily and I haven't been sick.
You may just have good genes if you're not getting sick. I don't think it's from vitamin C. You may just have good genes.
So how quickly if you have a COVID and a COVID rule out or a non-COVID right next to each other on vents, will the COVID patient die more quickly than the non-COVID patient?
If they're on vents, no. They're both the same at that point. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So even though the COVID patient with the, presenting with a very mucousy lung, I mean, are their lungs filled or they're just coated?
I shouldn't say that. I'll take that back. It really depends on the person, how healthy they were before. That really determines how long that they're going to be able to sustain the paralytics and, sedation and multiple different just procedures. Even when you're like sleeping or you're like, knocked out, sedated, and they're putting you through like these central lines that they're putting in and trachs, they're doing trachs. Even though they're practicing, essentially, your body knows what's going on. It's still going through trauma. It's very traumatic, even when you're under. That's why surgery, it takes a while to recover from, because you'll feel it for, how long do you feel that if you've ever had a surgery? And so they're putting their bodies, through horrible things, and that's adding more stress. It's killing them. Yeah. So the guy that pulled out his tube is really unique, because I saw him from the minute he got to our unit, and I didn't agree with him coming to the ICU. But he was admitted with hyperglycemia, which is high blood glucose, at like 700. So it's pretty high. I learned later that it was high because they were treating him with a lot of different psych drugs, and that increases it. It was the treatment that got him to the 700. And when you have a blood glucose that high, you're automatically going to have altered mental status. So now they called him crazy. Okay? So he's admitted to the ICU, and everyone's like, well, why is he here? Because he was acting out. He didn't know where he was. He was confused. And I went in there, and he wasn't my patient, but, we help each other. And I went in there and I tried to talk to him and calm him down. Like, hey, he's just like, I just want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. He has soft restraints on, so they restrain everybody. We have soft restraints on all of our patients, the majority of them, for sure. Which I think is crazy. But it goes with the territory, because everybody's really lazy and it's easier to just treat them with drugs or tie them to their beds. So he was tied up. Obviously, what is that going to do? It's going to make, you're tied up in a hospital, you don't have any family. What do you think? You're going to freak out. So he was. And his oxygen was sitting at, 88, 87. Doctor comes in, I should say, fellow comes in, and she says that if he can't get if she goes, if you can't get your breathing under control, we're going to have to put a tube in you to help you with that. And I go, what? I'm like, he doesn't need a tube down his throat. Like, he doesn't need a vent. She goes, well, yeah, he's destatting. And I said, no, like, absolutely not. He does not need that. We need to get his blood sugar under control and he will be fine, and maybe not tied to this bed. And she goes, yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll just monitor him. And I was working night shift. This was probably around 6 a.m. At 6:45, we had a code down the hall. The code passed. Had to do all that. Got out of there. I come back for shift, and guess what? The guy has been on a vent. I was so upset. They did it, I guess the nurses that took over said they did it literally as I left.
So I come back in the morning, he's on a vent. I'm like, you have to be f***ing kidding me. He did not need a vent.
They waited for you to leave.
They did.
We literally, that was the morning we coded 28 for 3 minutes. That we no sooner took the vent out of that room, cleaned it, and put it in here.
Yeah.
And tubed him.
Yeah, they took his vent after he died.
That's what happened
on him.
So they waited until I left because they know how I feel about this stuff.
Same thing with bed 9. They didn't need to intubate him. He was progressing. I don't think that I don't know what happened after we tried BiPAP, and then they brought him here, and I thought, well, cross my fingers and see.
And no one survives. He did. He was the only one that I've had.
That's what happened with him.
But he pulled his tube out, and so he has a chance again.
Oh, he did?
He extubated himself.
Oh, he did? I didn't know that. I thought he was extubated.
And how did he wake up?
Turns out that he did drugs.
So he was resistant to fentanyl.
All of this stuff that we give normal people didn't cut it for him. So he ended up, I'm like, you just saved your own life, you know? It's crazy. Don't put that on. But I mean, it did. You know what's sad? So they pulled it out, and they're like, oh, so-and-so's extubated. I'm like, no way. They don't extubate anybody. I'm like, that's so weird. Here it turns out he extubated himself. And now, he's fine. He's home now. This was just a couple days ago. But, what's sad is that he thinks we saved his life. You know what I mean? So he's like, you saved me. And I couldn't, I don't have the heart to be like, no, man, you saved yourself. You have like 9 lives. Because had he not pulled that out, he would definitely be dead. For sure. They don't extubate anyone.
Here's the problem. Not a single patient here, since this thing began, has been discharged or successfully extubated.
I asked the nursing supervisor for a sitter for the guy that pulled his tube out, because when they're waking up, they can be extra, I should say, where they need a little bit of extra attention. And I asked her for a sitter, and she told me that I didn't utilize all my resources first, which was Haldol, all the psych drugs to like chemically, put him to bed.
Your Florida hospital was literally having to furlough people?
Yes. What was happening is, obviously, they shut down all elective procedures. But they were also waiting for the wave. They called it the wave. So we were preparing, and we were in tiers based on our experience. So we were tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. And I was tier 1 because I have the, military trauma experience, ICU experience, so on and so forth. So I was working, throughout the hospital, training in other units, cross-training. Ultimately, it was to get hours.
It was what?
It was to get hours.
Yeah.
This is what the hospitals were doing. They're like, okay, we're going to give our employees hours this way to cross-train them for when the wave hits. And then that wave would get pushed back another week, and then it get pushed back another week. And the units that we were floating to, like cross-training, they're like, what are you doing here? We don't need you. So I felt like I was wasting my time.